Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. Excited to do another one of these. I think this is going to be our third duo podcast, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah,
And hopefully many more to come.
yeah, right on. It's always a nice time just being able to, I don't know, dive in and talk in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of topics planned for this one, but we can go in many different directions. I'll tell you what's been on my mind recently is selling memberships and courses. And by a membership, that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean a mastermind, a subscription, a paid community, a paid newsletter. So I'm choosing that as a catch-all term. I think this is, we talked last time about the struggle to monetize your newsletter or your audience on whatever medium that is. And I think memberships and courses are the way most media founders are going to do it best. It's how it was kind of done at the Hustle with trends.co. It's how a lot of my clients have done really well. Like at Cody Sanchez, she has a really popular membership at Mastermind, and that's been a huge revenue driver for her. And I think if she didn't have that, her business would be in a totally different spot. So I want to talk about how to sell that. And you have a unique insight on how to sell this stuff because you were basically in charge of growth for trends.co at the Hustle, which is the Hustle's premium subscription for people who don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did a lot of experimentation around growth channels for trends. I think certainly the highest volume channel was from the free newsletter, though, and using the subscription list that we built with the free newsletter, which I think is very bullish for any creators listening to the pod that are building a free list, a free subscription list, and looking to convert them to a membership or to a course. So, I mean, there's a few different ways we did that. I think, there are a lot of similarities in terms of the manner that the kind of like placements and channels that we use to convert that list to a lot of the folks that we've talked to on the pod, right? So like Jay Klaus, and I know we talked to Kieran Drew as well, using email automations, using in-newsletter placements. And yeah, I mean, happy to dive more into kind of the tactics that we use
maybe
there.
like break down all the different ways. So like, let's just say like we have this email list. We send a broadcast newsletter every day or once a week. What are the different marketing channels, like different methods we use to get those free subscribers to buy the paid subscription?
So I think there are three main placements or funnels that you could position it as. So the first being directly after subscription. So directly after the free subscription, presenting the offer there. So as some sort of welcome offer usually helps. So you just signed up for the free newsletter. If you want to dive in, right away, if you're somebody who's serious about this subject or is interested in getting, more insight than the free newsletter might offer, we have this special welcome offer for folks joining and actually giving them like some sort of a discount if they sign up like directly after subscription. So that tended to be kind of like a lower volume or a medium volume channel for us. And then in newsletter placements. So, you're sending that broadcast out, the free newsletter, having regular plugs for the membership or course, and also when you can, tying news items or content items back to the course. With Trends, we had a gated website as well. So we were able to just like plug gated links, which, depending on how you look at it, some people don't like that, and understandably so. If you click a link on the newsletter, you don't want to like give them the expectation that it could be gated and they might not have access to it. So that's something we only experimented with a little bit. But then I would say the highest volume channel was email automations and kind of what we called like our blasts. So we would build basically over the course of, let's say, the first like 30 days that someone's on the list, every once in a while, usually at a cadence of like once a week, they would receive, an email, especially if they were engaged. So if you have an email platform, an email marketing platform that allows you to use engagement as a trigger. And what I mean by that is someone's been sent 7 emails, they've opened 5 of them, send them this email. And that email would be inviting them to join the course or membership. You're somebody who seems to be really interested in the content. If that's the case, and again, you can offer it as a discount if you want for engaged subscribers, but just at least getting it out in front of them. And so folks would go through that drip sequence. And then after they'd been through that drip sequence, we would send them every week or every other week. Again, you don't want to be too like spammy with it, but we would test new messaging. And if that messaging performed well, then we'd roll it up into the drip sequence or replace existing drip emails. So it was just a constant testing of new messaging. And if it's a membership and you have a community, then you can just pull content, or you can pull kind of like sales material directly out of the community. Like, hey, look what folks are discussing in the community this week. Somebody just, in the case of trends, like somebody just broke down how they built this business from zero to like $3.5 million a year. These are the kinds of discussions we're having all the time. So yeah, that's like a whole other topic of like utilizing the membership and utilizing the course, what goes on in there as sales material, but it's also super useful.
Yeah, I want to dive into that too, but I just want to clarify and break down the email marketing because I think that's really important for people to understand. So, and I think this automation is so powerful where you put people into this sales sequence after they show that they're engaged. Because if you just put everybody into it, you can have problems where you have higher spam, which will lead to lower deliverability because you put the people who open 0 emails into a marketing sequence and they don't care, right? So I think that's smart to do. And it's just like, it's going to be more effective. You're sending it to your most engaged people. So after they open 5 emails out of 7, you put them in the sequence. And then how many in the sequence sends them an email once a week, for example, or like around that?
Generally.
And how many emails is that sequence? How long is that sequence? How many emails is it?
I mean, we tested it where it was pretty long, like seven over the course of like 7 weeks, like 7 emails. We'd also run. I mean, there's a balance to it, right? Where you don't want to your point, be too spammy, especially if you are sending it to your most engaged folks. It is like a balancing act because then you just piss off your most engaged readers by constantly trying to upsell them. So, I mean, I would start with like, if you're somebody who's like launching a course or membership, start with 3 emails over the course of like a month or even 3 weeks if you want to shorten kind of the window.
I might even say more than that, depending on what their business model is.
Yeah.
So we're using the hustle as an example, and like the primary revenue driver was sponsorship. So we wanted to keep those subscribers engaged. So they keep opening the email, and we get ad revenue.
Yeah,
but if you just have a free newsletter and like the purpose is to drive revenue to your membership course or coaching or something else, I think it's okay to send them a lot more emails. And if they're not a fit, like it's okay because you're not monetizing your free list a lot or at all. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point. The hustle, we had 1 million subscribers when we started doing this, and we you don't want to send out a huge bulk email to a huge bulk of that list like multiple times a week. But yeah, if you're somebody who's just getting started building now and you're not necessarily entirely reliant on like sponsorship revenue from the free email, yeah, I think it is a good idea to increase the cadence. One thing that we found is every time we'd send out one of those blasts, it's like, I mean, we've talked a lot about copywriting and the importance of writing good sales copy. But once we honed the formula a little bit, every time we sent one of those out, we'd get, a huge volume of new subscribers. And so, yeah, go figure. Email is your best friend in an email business.
And so when you send those one-off blast outs, like not the automations, would you send those blasts to people who already went through the 7-week sequence?
Exactly.
Is that how it worked?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting. And then if those blasts work, like you've had one that converted really well, you would add that email to the sequence so people going into the sequence would get it too. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're using that cohort that's already been through the sequence as like an area of further testing just to improve the existing drip sequence.
That's smart because I think a lot of people that set up a drip sequence, it's 7, it's 12 emails, and then it stays exactly the same for like a year. And so you need to be updating like your drip sequence, split testing subject lines, adding new stuff, removing stuff that isn't working as well, optimizing it just like you would optimize anything in marketing. And a lot of people do that, but a lot of people miss that too. So that's cool. So we got placements in the newsletter, drip sequences, email blast, any other marketing channels that worked for selling the Trends membership?
Well, we had like a budget for Trends as well. So we also ran a lot of paid Facebook. We did a lot of influencer marketing, which was a really interesting experience. It actually, I think in the aggregate, we hit our CPA targets with it. It's just an interesting channel in that it can be so hit or miss. So you'll run tests across 5 actually the volume's usually a lot more. You run a test across like 10 influencers and 8 of them are just total flops, but 2 of them hit so well that you end up making, the target in the aggregate. That was our experience. I'm sure that there are a lot of people that have run influencer marketing where all 10 are flops, and that could have well been us if we hadn't found those just like kind of 2 diamonds in the rough. But yeah, we did a lot of influencer testing on YouTube, on Instagram. So that was an interesting experience as well.
Tell us about that. Was there any placements that worked best? Like, did YouTube work better than Instagram? Did you test? I think you tested some newsletter placements too. Would you put that in that same category of influencer? I know it's kind of different, but
Yeah, I think
some people do.
yeah, newsletter placements I think are generally going to be higher quality and also higher attributable ROI, because with YouTube you get a lot of folks that see the name of your brand or your membership, and then they'll maybe come back later, or maybe they'll convert through another channel. So it's harder to prove direct ROI. Whereas a newsletter, it's just a link, right? So if you can add tracking parameters to that link, then you can ideally track, you can just get better attribution on it. There are folks that will behave in the same way as YouTube, where they see it and then they convert through another channel, but it's at least closer to accurate attribution.
And did YouTube? What were like the best channels? Was it YouTube? Was it newsletter? Was it something else?
In terms of volume for the membership, it was YouTube. But we also did most of our testing on YouTube, so it might be a little skewed.
That's how I felt too about influencer.
Yeah,
It
YouTube.
just seems like an Instagram post isn't going to do much. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's like one image, like one story on Instagram. It doesn't do a lot.
yeah. Even outside of newsletters and kind of media in general, like the influencer testing that I've done for other companies, I feel like YouTube has generally been the best hit for us.
Yeah, and I think newsletters work too, but it's almost a different channel. But outside of like your paid social, I think YouTube and newsletters make the most sense. You just get so much more of YouTube video. You get an ad read for like 30 or 60 seconds. You're able to link something in the description that people can actually click. You know, Instagram doesn't really have links. They have swipe up things, but that's a challenge too.
We were also working with an agency who was managing our influencer placements, like quick disclaimer there, and they did a good job for us. But generally CPM, because that's really where kind of the calculation starts. It's like if the CPM is too high, then your cost per click or your cost per like landing page visit is going to be too high. So we were always looking for deals, like basically underpriced influencers. Like they have a big audience. The audience is fairly close to the demographic that we'd be targeting for trends, and thinking about it, CPM first. And then also just like general fit, like general audience fit as well. That's something that's a little bit less quantifiable, but important nonetheless.
Would you put this in a spreadsheet? Like, okay, here's how much the place would cost. Here's the CPM. Here's our expected click-through rate, clicks, conversion rate, then sales and ROAS from it. Would you have like a calculator like that?
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, what we did was our general practice was you'd have like the name of the influencer, the channel, the number of placements that you've run, the reach of those placements, the cost of those placements, and then how many, all of those other metrics that you're talking about, like cost per landing page visit or cost per attributable landing page visit, and then ultimately like cost per acquisition, right? Cost per new trends member. And our idea was over time, we'd find like 4 or 5 influencers that we could basically rebook with on a recurring basis. And basically, through all this testing, have a stable of folks that where our CPA was well below our target CPA. And we eventually reached that, but it took some testing.
Are there any like commonalities between the YouTube channels that worked for you?
No, it was so weird.
No.
Some of them were just like we tested ones that were, I don't even know how you describe it, almost like edutainment, like education, entertainment, but not even really like that educational, more like we tested some that were more, I think, intuitively aligned with what trends was, like business channels or folks talking about startups. And some of them worked, some of them didn't. But then I think our biggest hit was one that just got a ton of views because they always talked about almost like kind of clickbaity stuff. Like, I'm trying to think of an example of a video. I'll come back to it if I think of an example, but what I will say is that I think the reason why it works so well is because it was so underpriced from a CPM perspective. So if you can find deals or negotiate deals where you can get a good deal on the CPM and just the number of views, I think that goes a long way.
In what CPM were you shooting for, or like target, or if you're going for like less than this amount, what was that number?
Man, I'm going to be reaching back. Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't give you a number. And honestly, at least like right now, just off the top of my head, I couldn't remember like what we were paying back then. But I would also say that it's probably changed.
I think it was less than 50 was the target.
Definitely less than 50.
Was it less than a $50 CPM?
That's
or was it
definitely less
different?
than 50. I think it was like I think it was like considerably lower than 20 is what we were trying to aim for. I would also say that's probably changed significantly too, right? Like now I think Influencer placements might just generally be more expensive as people realize that they can charge more and as there's just been more brand interest. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah,
You know what? I remember someone at the hustle saying like never pay over 50. So the target was below that, but like definitely don't go over 50 for influencer placement. Tim Ferriss went on the Colin Smeared podcast recently and he was talking about what he charged and he shared his CPM, which was $60.
yeah,
And he said that was on the higher end of podcasting CPMs. And I think at Tim Ferriss, that would make sense for a lot of people, but I thought that was good to know because he has a huge podcast. That's what he's charging. So it's a good benchmark for what the higher end of a podcast placement can be, which of course is different than YouTube and different from Instagram and different than newsletters, but interesting to hear.
yeah. We looked into advertising on Tim Ferriss, and I think I know that, I mean, he can afford to be picky, and I think what happened was he asks for a commitment of a certain number of placements, and it was just like outside of our budget. Like it was just like a lot. It was like 5 placements at that like $60 CPM. It might, I don't know if it was higher or lower back then, but yeah. But honestly, though, I think if we had the budget, we probably would have tried it because, um, you hear his pod reads, and they're like genuine endorsements from himself, which I think is kind of what you're really looking for in an influencer placement.
That's important to note. And I've listened to his reads, and he does a lot of vetting on the sponsor so he can give that endorsement. And I think that's baked into the price. And I think that's if you're doing a YouTube placement or a podcast placement or any influencer placement, I think that like endorsement is really important because that's kind of what you're paying for. You can go and buy a Facebook ad for a $10 CPM, right? But like there's a reason we're paying more for that. And it's because of that personal endorsement. And if you're not getting that, it's probably not good. Like a podcast ad that isn't read by the host, that's a really bad buy, you know?
Yeah.
I would never buy one of those. And of course, those probably have lower CPM, but still, I wouldn't. That kind of defeats the purpose of the medium, I think. That's cool. What do you think is like, you mentioned underpriced attention. Any underpriced attention out there that you see just in general? Could be paid ads, could be something else. This is what we're all going after as marketers or creators. Or
Yeah, I don't know.
right?
I don't know if there's anything that comes directly to mind. I don't know. I mean, what's your experience been on Twitter ads? I'm curious because I've worked on accounts where Twitter ads seems really, really affordable, especially for the kinds of folks that you're getting in front of. Like I know with like their lookalike audiences, you're able to target. Like I get kind of coming back to like newsletter ads and like acquiring free subscribers. There have been accounts that I've worked on where you're targeting like a very specific niche or profession, and you're able to get subscribers for like under $2, and it kind of seems like insane. But then I've worked on accounts where that's not the case, and it seems like maybe it's timing, maybe it's just like platform issues. But I'm curious to get your take because I think potentially, acquisition there could be underpriced right now.
That is a good example of one that I think is underpriced. And I think people have kind of seen it because all the advertisers have pulled out that Elon had the big debacle like last week or something about that. And of course, it's happened before that too. So it's there, but we haven't had success with everybody, right? And also, we don't have everybody even spending there yet. And we're also only focused on the newsletter industry, which is relevant to this audience, of course. So what we found is that if your audience is on Twitter, the Twitter ads work really well. So like startup newsletters, AI newsletters, finance newsletters, like people are on Twitter around that topic, the ads will work well to get subscribers for that newsletter or buyers for your course or membership there. If it's like lifestyle or something else, and sports is also an example of something that's on Twitter, but we haven't had success with the ads yet. But if the audience isn't really there, it's hard to. We had someone on the pod, Brett Perlmutter, who has just crushed it with Twitter ads for his newsletter, and it is called Bullet Pitch, and it's about like angel investing and VC investing or venture investing, I should say, right? So I think it's a good example of like if you have budget and your audience is there, definitely try Twitter ads for sure. Make sure you're using a conversion campaign though, because you want conversions, obviously. Another one that I'm seeing, I think newsletters are underpriced right now. And I think a lot of people haven't taken advantage of this yet, but I'm going to try to. We've talked about this on previous episodes of us where it's just, there's a lot of newsletters right now. So there's a lot of inventory and there's not a lot of advertisers and the CPMs have gone down a lot. And so now because supply and demand, right, people have left, it's an opportunity for people to go in and to buy underpriced attention and get good results from it. So I think it's really interesting. It's harder to organize, right? Because you have to organize across dozens of different newsletters to get a lot of traffic. I also think the underpriced attention is more in the newsletters that have 10,000 to like 100,000 subscribers. You're not going to get a lot of underpriced attention at a newsletter that has a million subscribers or 500K, right? Because it's more, they're more established. They know what they're worth. They know their pricing strategy, right?
Yeah,
But if you could
they're
buy
operating
20
in
ads
it.
across newsletters that exactly, yeah. I think if you could, and I might try and do this as a service. If you can organize sponsorships across a dozen newsletters that are really small, that can be powerful. And I think also, and let me know what you think about this, but you have to vet these more, just like you have to vet influencers, and you have to do a lot more funnel math than you do for a Twitter ad or a Facebook ad, right? So you have to go in and look at, okay, what's the open rate? What are the demographics? What are the ad clicks? What are the cost per click? What is that going to get me? How accurate do I think these stats are? Because some publishers haven't shared accurate information, right? Even where are their subscribers coming from? I think there's a lot of newsletters that have built up a big audience of a bunch of co-reg, and like you don't want to buy an ad in that newsletter because it's not going to get you anything. So it's nuanced, but I think if you understand that, you could use Twitter, you could use newsletter ads really successfully.
Yeah. What I'm seeing with like Tailwind partners is they're getting a lot of offers now through Beehive's ad marketplace from other newsletters on like a cost per click basis. So I think a lot of folks are starting to lean into using Beehive's ad marketplace for that for acquisition. And there were folks that were doing this before. Like I don't know if you've ever used Paved before. Basically like a self-serve platform for purchasing ads in newsletters and publishers. So Beehive's basically created something similar with the Beehive ad marketplace, and it's all priced from what I've seen on like a cost per click basis. So to your point, you still need to do a little bit of funnel math, but I mean, if you can basically pay a buck 25 a click in a newsletter that's really close to your audience already, and I mean, I think generally a simple newsletter landing page, like if it's optimized like okay, should be probably converting at like a 40 to 50% a conversion rate. So that's like a $2 cost per acquisition, which I think is pretty standard. And I mean, yeah. So I think to your point, newsletters a great opportunity and potentially underpriced if you're able to do the math a little bit and use these tools and platforms that are now available to you. It might be less of an operational headache as well.
Yeah, if I wanted to buy from a platform, I would definitely use Beehive's platform. Paved, I don't think is as good. They also take 30% from publishers. A lot of publishers don't want to use Paved. Swapstack's platform was really good and better than Paved, but it's shut down now. It would only take 10% from advertisers, so it was. I thought you got better deals on Swapstack. I liked that one a lot, but it's not. They got acquired by Beehive, so it's not around anymore. But it's either organize it yourself or use Beehive. I honestly don't know of another alternative. There's a few other ones out there, but I wouldn't really trust them. I haven't heard positive things or negative things too. A funny one I was thinking of is like these kind of alternative social networks. Are you familiar with like Rumble and what are some of these other ones?
What is passion
Um,
fruit? I've seen that on Twitter and I'm not really sure what that one is.
Passion Fruit, yeah, that's a newsletter. They have a discovery platform too, kind of like a Paved or a Swapstack, and it's a tool people use to book sponsorships. And now you can discover influencers and newsletters on their platform. So that's one I think I would look at too. But again, the funnel math has to back out for you, of course. But that's just another one to look into.
Something that somebody brought up with me because they were talking about Beehive versus Substack, and I think generally, I think for you and me, and I think for a lot of other people, they'd say Beehive, and I would stick by that. But an interesting feature of Substack that they brought up was almost kind of like a discovery homepage for publications. And I don't think that Beehive has something like that. I think that would be an interesting like development, though. Basically, just like being able to search more easily for newsletters on Beehive, or at least discover new newsletters on Beehive by category or by even by name or by interest, right? Or like have like a recommended section. It'd be interesting, especially as we've just seen this kind of huge explosion of people building on Beehive. It might be cool to have easier access to kind of the library of publications there.
Yeah, they should add that. And honestly, they should add it outside of their ad network where it's like, I think that's the most publisher friendly way to do it, where they build the directory. They don't share pricing. They just share contact information or a way to reach out. And you can say reach out to the ad network or reach out directly to the publisher because there's no discoverability. Like to define newsletters, I would go and look at Swapstack, which is shut down now, and look at Paved. They're not all on there though. There's a few other options. I'm trying to think of an example, but I really don't know any. So like if you wanted to go and find 30 newsletters with 20,000 subscribers in your niche, like they're out there, but you can't really find them unless you know them.
Yeah.
So that's a problem for advertisers that needs to be solved.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, the purpose of Substack's kind of discovery platform isn't even necessarily for advertisers. I think it's also for readers. And so it could be an interesting just kind of organic growth mechanism as well. Like if Beehive was, if folks were looking for publications, I don't know. I don't know generally what the volume of people organically hopping onto and looking for newsletters on a regular basis would be. But that's what this person that I was speaking to was saying. Kind of the benefit is, oh, well, people can find my newsletter more easily. I was thinking that is interesting that doesn't already exist. Some sort of a homepage where it's like, okay, show me all the sports newsletters that I want to, or, soccer newsletters that I might be interested in, or more just like searchability.
Yeah, it would be cool if Beehive did a better job with that, but also it's just kind of hard to prioritize the features because there's so much like internal, like they could be building more marketing automations, which I would love to see, other ways to monetize the newsletter.
Totally.
Or the platform, right? But yeah, they're kind of building, they have a different mindset. They're kind of like, Substack is Amazon and Beehive is Shopify. And I'm okay with that. I would rather be using in this type of, we're trying to build an owned audience. I want to be using Shopify. I don't want to be on Amazon competing with everybody and being reliant on a platform. 100%. Substack is kind of becoming a platform business. It's not becoming a tool for publishers in the same way. And what's funny is I talk to a lot of Substack newsletters. Everybody who's still on Swapstack is there because most of their subscribers and
Substack or
customers are coming from Substack.
Yeah.
I don't know if I said Swapstack, but I mean Substack.
Yeah.
And that's like, I'm a little worried for them because like that's the main reason they're on the platform. Like it's not because the marketing tools are better. It's a better product than anything else. It's just they're getting more subscribers and pay customers from the ecosystem. And I don't know if that's going to last forever.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the ecosystem is growing. So it feels a little bit like a Ponzi scheme that may pop eventually, or a bubble that may pop eventually over there.
Yeah, it's kind of like this weird problem that I think we've seen start to crop up more and more as newsletters have kind of taken off just in this last cycle as a medium, which we've talked a lot about. But just like this kind of like shared attention economy where, and I think Substack might have, I don't know if they started it, but they, you had a dashboard where you could see how much of your volume was coming from their recommendations, right? And I'm not saying that people can't pay attention to multiple newsletters at the same time, but there is kind of the argument, and actually I think Adam Ryan made an argument for this in his newsletter about Media Perpetual, where he basically was saying early on, like recommendations, at least like these recommendations, the recommendation platform that Substack has is long-term kind of detrimental to engagement for newsletters because it just kind of splits attention across all of these publications.
When you sign up for a Substack newsletter, how many newsletters do you think you get recommended?
That's a good question. I'm not aware.
You don't know?
Yeah.
It's 7. It's 7. You have to opt out of those if you don't want to get added to those. It's a lot of newsletters. For example, like another recommendation network called, I'm forgetting the name now, Sparkloop, which I like. It's the max they do is 5, but Substack is doing 7. You have to opt out of those to get out of them. Most people don't understand that. And then they also do a lot of other prompts to recommending the newsletter. So if you sign up for a newsletter, they're going to send you emails about other newsletters that you may like based off of what newsletter you signed up for. I don't entirely dislike it, but it's a lot. I bet the average person who joins a Substack newsletter joins 5 other newsletters, which again, like I can't say that's a bad thing, but it's like, it's a lot. And I do think it is a bad thing if most of your growth as a publisher is coming from recommendations from other people.
Especially
because no one actually sought out your stuff. They're just sign up for your stuff because they sign up for something else. That's not a high quality audience that actually wants your information.
Especially with the knowledge that it's pre-populated. It's basically like pre-populated co-registration, which means that the numbers that you're looking at of, oh, wow, look at all of these people that are joining my list. They're people that don't even know they're joining your list. And so like long term, it's like you have that vanity number of, oh, I added like 100 people this week through Substack recommendations. But at the end of the day, those are people that generally speaking might have very little interest in actually reading what you're putting out. So
Yeah, I have to do more research on this, but I do think at least on Substack, it kind of works like a Ponzi scheme right now. Because if you look at who's getting most of the most of the recommendations, it's the top newsletters on Substack. It's the people who are top five in their categories in finance, business, investing, whatever it is, right? If you start a newsletter on Substack today, no one's going to recommend you unless you have a network there. It takes a lot of time, but you're going to be recommending other people. So it's like, who's getting the benefits in this game? It's like the people who are on top. I think eventually, once new people stop going to that ecosystem, it's just not going to work anymore. And unfortunately, the main benefit of using that platform is because of the ecosystem. So as soon as the ecosystem stops driving growth, then everybody's going to leave and it's all going to fall apart. And so I just don't see that company. I don't see that company working in the long term, or that platform working in the long term. I think within the next 1 to 2 years, there's going to be things that fall apart there. And I think if they lose like their top 5 or 10 publishers on there, and they lose the growth to that ecosystem, I think the whole thing can fall apart really quickly.
Yeah, I think they've got a job ahead of them. I mean, we've both worked on Substack newsletters in the past, like from a growth perspective, and sometimes the same one. But I think if you're an operator, it doesn't enable you as a newsletter operator in the same way that I think is pretty much the standard now for these other platforms like Beehive and ConvertKit. You don't have the same visibility into important growth metrics. You don't have the same ability to kind of lean into, again, like what I think are like pretty standard growth initiatives now. And then to tie it back to the beginning of the conversation, if you have like a paid membership, I mean, at least running paid growth to a paid membership is a nightmare on Substack, which maybe not a priority for everybody. At least last time that I was using the platform.
Yeah, it's still a nightmare for any type of paid growth, but again, it's not a priority for everybody,
Yeah.
so I can understand that. Can you send from a custom domain on Swapstack, or is it always from a Swapstack domain? That's something I was curious about.
I'm not sure.
Like your sending domain, not your. I know you can do a website domain
Well,
that's on your own domain.
yeah, I think you
But
can. You can. Actually, yes, you definitely can because I've
okay, that's good.
that's my understanding. I don't want to say definitely, but my memory serves that some of the newsletters that I've worked on Substack were actually sending from their, I guess, like owned domain, their custom domain.
I think that's important if you want to be able to move your audience across platforms. Because if you're sending from Substack's domain and you want to move to something else, that's a big problem, right? So that's just a good caveat and thing to note for people out there. Use a custom domain and move over to one soon if you haven't already.
100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think any other topic you wanted to cover? I think we got some good stuff covered. We got some good stuff covered on this call.
Yeah, and I mean we'll definitely have more for next time as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, any call to actions? I would say if you like the podcast, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever else. That's really helpful. And be subscribed wherever you get it.
Definitely. And yeah, shoot Matt and I a DM if there's anything that you want us to cover or respond to a tweet when we post the link to the episode. Really helpful to know what people are interested in learning more about.
Yeah, topic ideas are great. If there's something you want us to cover, we might do an episode just about your question. So that's a great idea. Let us know I think on Twitter would be the best spot. Or you can go to our websites and shoot us an email. Our websites are linked below in the description, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, thanks, man.
Awesome.